Hi, everybody. This is Nicole from the Right Habit podcast. And today I'm speaking to Dr. Hilary Wason. She is an academic, she is an expert in education, but she has also been working with me on slightly more odd and spiritual ways of writing. And I'm very curious on how she is using these creative and slightly weird ways to still get her research done and be very thinking led, but also opening herself up to whatever else might be out there to get all her writing done. So, welcome, Hilary.
Welcome. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hilary, I've seen you in a few of my programs, in the more academically led programs like the 90-day program, but also in my programs about how to start a book with automatic writing and how to use the automatic writing technique. Can you share a little bit about what you do in the world and what topics are really important to you?
So, I'm an associate professor in education, specifically in higher education, and I have spent my sort of career teaching students and then moved into a more central role. So, I work across the university supporting colleagues to develop impactful curriculum, to teach, to assess, and I'm particularly interested in the development of critical thinking. And I think, especially now with the advent of AI, cultivating students' criticality is even more important. Support students to come out into the world as, powerful critical thinkers who can, add value to the world.
You're going to hate the next question, but could you help me understand what critical thinking is with just a simple example? Because I feel like I am thinking
Aha.
critically, but maybe I'm really not. So I'm curious what that means.
There are so many different definitions. How do you go about doing it? I was all about making it a very accessible concept and really demystifying it. So my work draws on Fazione's framework of 6 critical thinking skills: finding information, analyzing information, evaluating information, drawing inferences, deduction, and explanation. And I scaffolded these skills and developed 14 different pedagogical tools, which I worked with educators in my university and in other universities, nationally and internationally, to embed within their curriculum and to meaningfully align these to their teaching practice, whether they were bioscientists or humanities teachers or business teachers, and also nursing educators. The other key thing that I brought into it much more recently is dialogic education as well. So, really supporting students to develop their voice and develop their academic confidence, moving away from the abstract theory to a very practical: how can we actually teach it? How do we actually do it?
And so, how can you detect if a student has the skill, right, and they are critically thinking versus a student who hasn't learned it yet? How can you tell who's got it and who doesn't?
We've been providing students with a set of language to almost train them to have a productive academic conversation. You have to, as an educator, design very purposeful activities. You can start to see how students are discussing with each other. The more students can develop that oracy, in terms of speaking and thinking through talk, the better their written work actually becomes. We've got numeracy skills, literacy skills in the curriculum, but actually I think oracy needs to have a place there as well, especially with Gen AI and the fact that it's now becoming quite difficult to design assessments that where you can not design out AI. I'm not suggesting that, but just finding alternatives to enable students to use AI productively.
So, oracy means you can listen and speak effectively. And
Absolutely.
yeah, okay, got it. And you just mentioned AI. So I remember when I was an academic and I had to tell a research assistant, this is what I want from you. Can you please go through these steps and do it? I have to treat AI the same way. I can't just say, I'm stuck with this, tell me something. I have to be specific. And that makes me improve my oracy almost as a side effect. So
Yes.
I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's almost a way of sort of training you into sort of good research practice in a sense, because, you have to think really carefully right from the get-go about what is it I want to achieve from this? What are my questions? What am I trying to find out? As you talk around, as you sort of, learn through talk, as you have these meaningful conversations, I think that's where it can support students to then go off and maybe put something into AI, or even use AI as part of these conversations. Let's see what comes out of this. Let's talk about these. But I think it's also it develops much more of a awareness of bias as well. So that aspect of criticality, really encouraging students to be thinking really intentionally and ethically and critically about what information is coming back and what is the source. Can I go back to the source? What's the source telling me? What else can I find out? How can I compare and contrast this? So you're not just relying on this one particular mode of getting information. You know, a lot of employers are wanting graduates who can turn around and say, well, actually, I'm intentionally and purposefully using these particular tools because I've learned that these can give me these outputs and that is of benefit. You see lots of headlines, it's going to kill critical thinking. I think it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to take it into a completely different dimension.
These are all the future generations. These are all the bosses in industry, the
Yeah,
politicians, the policymakers,
yeah,
wherever they end up in their life, whatever they are teaching future generations. So I almost feel like this is the skill to have. Think
yes.
critically, and also, this is just where
Mm.
we are, engage with AI in an ethical but also thoughtful way. I think that is almost the source of everything that we need in this world. I'm going really big now.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that because the title, my working title of the book I'm writing at the moment, this is what I sort of came up with, was What's the Point of Higher Education?
Mm.
It's a practical guide to teaching critical thinking, and that critical thinking shouldn't be a separately taught course. It needs to be completely immersed in the discipline. It's the whole point of higher education now. Yes, is knowledge, yes, you know, the disciplinary knowledge, yes, but it's how do you think about it?
Tell me, what's the status of the book?
This book is based on my educational doctorate that I completed 2 years ago. It incorporates a handbook for critical thinking, so a series of guides and tools and explanations of how to use these. But the other thing that's going to make it different is it's going to be a series of case studies, actual examples from a range of different educators, for example, in nursing, business, science, who have actually used some of the tools. And so it's talking through their experience of using it, some tools to help curriculum developers to do that, and what were some recommendations that they would make for other educators.
All of what you just said sounds very practical, but also very thinking oriented, very intellectual in a way, right? There is a certain rigor to it. There are certain steps, certain frameworks. And yet, Hilary, you have also worked with me on slightly woo-woo techniques of writing that sound like they don't fit in there at all, but somehow you are combining them. And I'm specifically talking about automatic writing. You've been in my course, Start Your Book with Automatic Writing, and in the Sacred Circle afterwards. So quite a few weeks together where we meditated together and then bypass the thinking, turn off our brains, and just let the writing flow and just enter a conversation with our inner guidance and just let through whatever needs to come. So first of all, I just want to know, why did you sign up for it? Like, I'm curious because it sounds like,
Aha.
anyone who's an academic, like I also used to be one, would just run the other way if anyone comes with something slightly woo-woo and like meditate and write at the same time. Why did you sign up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very curious person, and I'm quite a creative person as well. So I'm always trying new things, always interested in trying new things. And I've been cooking around the idea of a book for quite a while, but I just needed something to get me going and get me started. So when this came along, I thought, this could be, let's give this a go. Let's see what happens. And the rest is history, really.
So let's go a little bit into that history because you and I know it, but the others
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, maybe if we think back of the first session where, I explained that automatic writing is a meditative exercise where you go into meditation, you try and not think anymore, you go into your body, and then you ask your inner guidance questions and you let the answers come to me like a vessel, like channeling. There are different ways of talking about it. The most recent one I heard was try to be the hollow bone, which I found interesting. How did that feel when you did it for the first time?
I'll be honest, at first I thought, not quite sure what this is all about. I'm not quite sure how it could be applied. I'm always thinking again, it's my practical brain is, well, that's really interesting. This is a theory, but how could it be used in practice? So, to be honest, Nicole, at first I was a bit skeptical. I didn't quite get it, but my interest was piqued enough to keep going. What I really, really liked about it was the aspect of the future self. I was able to relate that to my PhD journey actually, where I was always thinking, when this is finished, this is what it'll be like. I'll be a doctor. I'll be seen differently in my academic spaces. And that definitely happened. It made quite a big difference from that perspective. That's what I think really, really resonated with me because again, my logical brain had kind of seen it happen before. So then I could see it happening again. The other big driver there was because you talk about this inner circle and inviting your inner circle in. The other key thing there for me was my participants. And I wanted their stories and the effort that they put into this, I wanted that to be published.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that you were tapping into all kinds of inner guidance. Future self is usually the easiest entryway, which is why I I use it also
Mm,
heavily. But yeah, the research participants of the research that you had done, where you felt like, I want to write this book and I want their voices to be heard. And then imagining them as guides for you. They had given you their time, and there's often a residue. It could be
yeah,
an energetic one, or simply in your subconscious, you feel still connected to all these people
yeah,
that you watched in developing their critical thinking skills, perhaps, right? And so just envisioning them around you to say, yes, we trust you with everything we've given you. We have given you all of ourselves, and we trust you.
yeah,
Now turn it into a book. That is really powerful. And that
yeah,
is the spark comes back when it's not just, oh, I should write a book because I have to put it on my CV and otherwise it was all for nothing. But suddenly those voices are living within you. And really weirdly, then it's easier to write. You feel more, as you just said, more confident, more trusting in the process, right? Did I catch that
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I'm always really interested in how people work together, how we come together in order to develop research, develop ideas. I really like participatory research designs. So I'm really interested in that, the almost the emotional and intellectual labor that's involved in that sort of thing. And I kind of see this as a similar process, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the intellectual labor. I enjoy sometimes the emotional labor. Obviously, there's ups and downs, but I find it personally find it very satisfying. But also, I like to the output as well at the end of the day. So I, but and I'm trusting that's going to happen, and I'm seeing that. I've got my book proposal here, 15,000 words. I've written a chapter, but I still have my other key sort of guides are my PhD supervisors who are still I'm still in contact with, are still really encouraging me. So they really believed in this work and still believe it now. And that's been a huge part of that inner circle almost.
And so is it right that your supervisor is an actual person who you still talk to
Yes.
actually, and then
Yes.
you're sort of combining your inner guidance, your inner circle, people you are maybe imagining, but then also you have your external circle, your team, right? So you have sort of doubled up and
Yeah.
gotten extra trust and support, and now you've gotten 15,000 words and a book proposal. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
I've got a football team here, Nicole.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. When I think back into the time we had together, it was such a quite small group that we had over about 6 weeks or so. Do you remember any moments where you felt like, oh wow, I'm really touched by this, or wow, I can't believe this just happened, because everybody unlocked something and everyone was writing very different books, memoir and academic and all kinds of
Yep.
different things, novel.
Mhm.
Do you remember any of those moments, and would you be happy to share?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I do remember, this idea of resistance, resistance in the creative process and how uncomfortable that can be. I remember one particular colleague talking about that a lot. What that really unlocked for me was I was thinking and I do, it's a physical thing. There is no doubt about it. You feel it in your body. Well, I do. I feel resistance absolutely in my body. I used to sometimes I would say, "Oh, well, I can't do anything because this is how I'm feeling." Whereas what these sessions did was help me look at it differently. I was almost a bit more it was a bit of metacognition actually, becoming aware of what was when you need to rest and when it's just a bit of resistance because something is just that little bit difficult. That's what really, really struck me is that sort of creative process. The other thing that really struck me was how, and my guides in my situation was quite different. Others were, it was much more of a spiritual and their books were very different, whereas mine is an academic book. So I still have the evidence base, thinking about the theories. I still have that kind of there and underpinning. So really became aware of the different contexts and how people adapted and and used it differently depending on where they were at and what they were doing. And I think that's really powerful.
And that's exactly why I'm so fascinated by it, because when I started it as an academic and I learned it from a very spiritual guy, Michael Sandler, extremely spiritual. I just really wanted a new writing technique. And I thought, okay,
Hmm.
I'm not going to listen to anything he says about the universe. And still, I've used it for my more, let's say, professional and academic writing. I've used it for my memoir. I think it's really good for memoir when you unlock memories that are
Right.
painful and you do it in the
Yes.
way of a channel just to be able to deal with the emotions that might come up, right? But it also works with, we had a novelist in the group. I know that some people do it for poetry. I've certainly used it for
Mm.
poetry. And
Hmm.
of course, you can always edit and make it better later. And somehow, still, I feel, especially speaking to the resistance, I've been wondering because I also have resistance to my own writing and my own
Mm.
books. Whenever I say, okay, I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to get into, I have my technique, I'll get into the zone, and I just see myself as the vessel. I'll just let it come through my hands. I'm just completely surrendering my book to whatever entity we want to talk about, future self, subconscious, the universe. I'm going to just let it through. Suddenly, the resistance is so much reduced because I'm just the vessel. I'm
Aha.
just the channel. I'm just letting the story come through, and I don't feel like I need to
Right.
sit here and force the good stuff
Yes.
out. It's more
Hmm.
like I completely surrender. And I have also sometimes cried just the release of this
Mm.
body tension.
Hmm.
And suddenly the words came out, and they were never perfect, but
Mm.
I could see I can write in any condition. I have a super chaotic life sometimes and really a lot of stuff going on, and yet I
Hmm.
can sit there and write.
Hmm.
And that can happen with any genre, academic or memoir
Yeah.
or novel.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be really studies on this,
I agree.
right?
I
So,
completely agree. I
so
completely
weirdly
agree.
effective. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. What was it? Someone that don't. This might not be a correct statistic, but I think it was Leo Tolstoy who had something like 13 kids and still was able to write War and Peace. So it's
Mhm.
that kind of thing. It's no matter what else is going on, and I think this whole thing's given me the courage to just accept that. A lot has happened over the last year, some personal things, and it's just, that's just you just sit with it. I think it's almost learning to sit with things and let things pass. And as you say, that idea of surrendering to the vessel is actually because sometimes we over intellectualize everything. I did. I was trying to overanalyze why I didn't want to do something, or because it's because of this, it's because of that. It's just like, well, just sit and do it.
Yeah.
Just do
Yeah.
it. It doesn't matter what actually comes out, but just actually sit and do it. And gradually that momentum starts to build up. And before you know it, you've got a whole lot of stuff down there. And as you say, it's not, and it's letting go of the perfectionism. I can be a bit of a perfectionist as well. I've always have been a bit like that. So that's been, and maybe that's some of the pain that I have as well.